Hey guys, welcome to the Sleepy Science. Tonight we're slipping into something strange and beautiful. A thought so small it could fit on the tip of your finger, yet it stretches across the entire planet like a hushed riddle. Picture this, a tiny creature pale and soft, no bigger than a grain of rice. It wiggles gently, as if unsure of its own importance, and yet, somewhere in its slow chewing rhythm, there's a secret that could loosen the knots of forever. Don't worry, you'll probably survive this journey. At least, I think you will. So, before you sink any deeper into this drifting thought, take a soft breath, let the day slide off your shoulders, and if you feel like it, tap that little like button, maybe even subscribe, but only if it feels gentle, honest, no rush. Where are you listening from tonight? Is it midnight where you are, or still dusk? Maybe morning, and you're pretending to work. Either way, this moment is yours. Dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft ocean hum, and let's slip into this quiet together. Now, imagine you are lying back, floating, not on water, not on air, but on something softer, like the breath between thoughts. And in this space, an image forms a worm, a waxworm. The name feels curious on your tongue, like a secret word whispered in the dark. You wonder, why wax? Why worm? Why now? The first flicker of curiosity is always tender, isn't it? It tiptoes in like a stray candle flame in a vast dark hall, and tonight it flickers inside you. How could something so small, so seemingly forgettable, hold the key to one of the loudest problems we've ever made? The plastic problem. Ah, plastic. The word feels slippery, doesn't it? Glossy, cold. You touch it every day without thinking. The cup in your hand, the screen you're watching, the invisible threads in your clothes. It's everywhere. It's eternal, or so they said. But here's where the whisper begins. A worm, soft, fragile, almost accidental in its existence, has been found doing something that sounds like a fairy tale for scientists. It eats plastic, or, rather, it transforms it, gently, quietly, one nibble at a time. And that's where you pause, isn't it? That pause before wonder stretches open like a velvet curtain, because plastic was supposed to last forever. That was the point. Forever was the sales pitch. Forever was the curse. And now, forever has teeth. Your mind drifts to a strange meadow at night. Not grass, not flowers, but hills of plastic bags gleaming under a pale moon. Oceans of bottles shimmering like frozen waves. And in that hush, you see movement, not machines, not men, but worms, small as whispers, crawling like tiny rivers of hope. Funny, isn't it? All our billion-dollar brilliance, all our towers of thinking, and nature just shrugs, sends in a caterpillar, like a sleepy janitor cleaning up after the loudest party in history. You smile, you have to. It's absurd, it's perfect. And so you follow that smile deeper into the soft hum of science and dream, waxworms. They aren't even meant for this world of plastic. They were born in honeyed shadows deep inside beehives, chewing wax like a sweet, chewy moonlight. That was their destiny. Beeswax, a natural polymer, warm and golden. But somewhere in that shared language of molecules, in that ancient habit of breaking down wax, a door was left ajar, a door that opens into polyethylene, the stubborn backbone of plastic bags. The worms wander through, oblivious to the miracle they carry. You think about that. How many miracles are we carrying? Unaware, inside you right now, tiny bacteria are performing alchemies you never thank them for. The enzymes swirling in the dark, untangling knots, humming in keys no ear has ever heard. There's a fact, soft and shimmering in this lullaby, that might make you tilt your head. Scientists didn't set out to find this. It was an accident. A beekeeper, cleaning out waxworm cocoons from a hive, tossed them into a plastic bag. Later the bag was riddled with holes, not chewed out of boredom but dissolved, softened, transformed. And so, like most great discoveries, it began not with a thunderclap, but with a whisper. Your eyelids feel heavy now, don't they? Like two slow doors closing on the day. But you're curious still, because this isn't just a bedtime story. It's a question dressed as a worm. What does it mean when the smallest life begins to rewrite our biggest mistakes? You picture that worm again, glowing faintly now in the darkness of your thought. A quiet lantern, a soft rebellion against forever. And as you drift, you can't help but chuckle softly, because somewhere, someone once said, man has conquered nature, and nature just smiled and sent a worm. The flicker grows brighter, warmer. It doesn't shout, it doesn't need to. It hums like a lullaby. What else is waiting in the quiet corners of the world? What other keys have we dropped, and who is small enough to pick them up? Your breath deepens, your shoulders sink, and the question lingers like a candle that never burns out. The first flicker of curiosity has become a soft fire, and it lights the path ahead. You drift deeper now, like a leaf spiraling down through a slow-motion breeze. The first flicker of curiosity has dimmed into a gentle glow inside your mind, and that glow, it lights up a vast, strange landscape. Plastic, everywhere. You stand, or maybe you float, inside what feels like a dream, stitched from every shopping bag, every bottle, every forgotten wrapper that ever slipped from human fingers. It's not a nightmare, not yet. It's something quieter, stranger, like walking through the bones of a vanished civilization. The ground beneath you is soft, but not soil. It crunches faintly, brittle, as if the earth has traded its heartbeat for the static hush of polymer. In the distance, hills rise, smooth and glimmering under a bruised sky. They look like dunes made of frozen rain. You take a slow step. Your foot sinks into a drift of pale blue bags. They sigh when you move, like tired ghosts. This is the velvet night of plastic. A night that began a century ago and never really ended. A night spun from invention, wrapped in convenience, and tucked into every corner of life. It was supposed to be progress, and maybe for a while it was. You tilt your head back, staring at a moon that feels artificial, white and sharp-edged, like the plastic caps scattered at your feet. And you remember a quiet fact, one that glows like a cold star. Since the 1950s, humans have made over 8 billion metric tons of plastic. Most of it is still here, still waiting, because plastic doesn't melt into the earth. It lingers, a guest that never leaves. You let that settle on your tongue like a snowflake that doesn't melt. 8 billion tons. Enough to wrap the planet in a glossy, crinkling shroud. Enough to build mountains that never grow flowers, only fragments. And then, a thought drifts in like a feather. Forever was the promise. When plastic was born, that was its charm. It wouldn't rot, wouldn't decay. It was clean, bright, faithful. A loyal servant that never said goodbye. Funny, isn't it? We asked for permanence, and permanence said yes. Your breath deepens as you wander through this silent empire. You pick up a bottle half buried in dust. It's clear, scratched, but whole. You turn it slowly in your hands, feeling time pulled inside it, still untouched. Maybe it once held water, crisp and pure. Maybe someone drank from it on a summer afternoon, laughing, never thinking of this night. You smile softly, a tired little smile, because isn't that the truth of us? Always drinking the present, never tasting the aftertaste of tomorrow. You keep walking. The air feels thick with stillness, like an abandoned theatre after the play. Plastic bags hang from skeletal trees, fluttering like pale flags. The wind nudges them and they whisper, faint and papery, forever, forever, forever. A hush settles in your chest. You wonder, how long would this night last if left alone? 100 years? 1,000? Longer than language? Longer than love? The science drifts toward you like a slow tide. Polyethylene, polypropylene, PET, names like spells, crafted in bright laboratories. They don't listen to rain. They don't bow to frost. Even the sun's fire only frays them into smaller ghosts, microplastics, tiny enough to dance inside raindrops, to whisper in the lungs of whales, to hum inside your own blood. And here comes the humour, soft and sly, padding on velvet paws. Humans made a material that outlives their own empires. We wanted immortality, and we gave it to trash. You let out a quiet chuckle. It feels strange in this dream of hushed bags and brittle hills, but it's true. Plastic is the immortality we never meant to write. And then you pause, because in the distance, you hear something, a rustle, faint, almost shy, like something small, moving through forever. Your mind tilts. Could it be the worm? That tiny lantern from your earlier thought? You strain your ears, though the sound feels more imagined than real. And yet, it comforts you. This idea of life creeping softly through a desert of dead things. You kneel, brushing aside a drift of pale film. The plastic sighs like old paper. Nothing there. Just a candy wrapper staring up with faded eyes. You laugh, softly, at your own hope. And then your gaze slides to the horizon, where the hills glow faintly, as if the moonlight has decided to sing. A question tiptoes in, curling around your thoughts like smoke. What if this isn't forever? What if forever is only a story we told ourselves? The night deepens. The velvet folds closer, darker, softer, and in its hush you feel the pulse of something hidden, like a heart still beating under layers of synthetic skin. You close your eyes for a breath, and the image comes a waxworm, pale as a pearl, sliding between molecules like a ghost rewriting the script of time. And for a moment, the empire of plastic feels less eternal. It feels delicate, breakable, a glass tower trembling under a song too small to hear. You open your eyes. The hills shimmer faintly, as if holding a secret they're not ready to spill. And the whisper lingers, threading through your slowing thoughts. Even in the quietest night, change moves softly. You exhale, you sink a little deeper, and the dream folds its velvet wings around you, carrying you toward the next hush of wonder. You feel the velvet night folding behind you now, like the last curtain drawn across a quiet stage. The empire of plastic drifts into a dim memory, and another world begins to glow at the edge of your thought, a warmer one, amber and sweet. You step into it slowly. The air feels thick, perfumed with honey and something older, something sacred. It clings to your skin like liquid sunlight. All around you, the walls are golden hexagons, perfect cells like nature's own cathedral, a beehive. You've been here before, haven't you? In some forgotten dream of summer fields and slow wings humming against the sky. And here, inside this honeyed chamber, life moves with patient grace. Bees drift past you like floating jewels, their tiny bodies dusted in gold. They hum a note that seems to cradle your heartbeat, soft and steady. And then you see it, curled in a quiet corner, pale as a pearl against the dark wax. The worm? The waxworm. You kneel, your breath stirring faint ripples in the thick, sweet air. The creature shifts, slow and gentle, like a ribbon folding in its sleep. It doesn't seem extraordinary at all, just a small, soft-bodied larva, almost shy in its stillness. If you saw it in the daylight crawling across a windowsill, you might wrinkle your nose, brush it away, but here it feels different, almost holy. You watch as it stretches, inching forward, its tiny mouth grazing the wax like an absent-minded kiss. This is what it knows, what it was born to do. Beeswax is its birthright, a banquet woven from lipids and light, and as it chews it hums in silence, an ancient hymn only the enzymes understand. There's a science fact here, glowing faintly like a candle in the dark. Beeswax isn't so different from plastic, not in its bones. Both are polymers, long chains of carbon, tangled like strings of destiny. The waxworm doesn't know that, of course. It only knows hunger, but hunger can be a compass, leading life into places it was never meant to go. You tilt your head, watching it nibble with slow devotion, and a thought drifts in like a lazy bee. If you were the worm, you wouldn't know you were making history. You wouldn't know your quiet chewing might one day be written in books, whispered in laboratories, dreamed of by restless humans staring at mountains of trash. You'd just be hungry. You smile at that, a sleepy little smile that tucks itself into the corners of your lips. Isn't that how most revolutions begin? Not with trumpets, but with appetite. And then the humour comes, soft and sly. The heroes we imagine wear capes, not segments. They swing swords, not jaws the size of a pinhead. But here it is, a saviour dressed in beige, moving like spilled silk, dreaming of wax while dismantling eternity. The hive hums gently around you, warm and golden. You feel the weight of its history. The bees, architects of sweetness, sculptors of symmetry, guardians of light, and here, in their quiet palace, a worm writes a side story no bee could guess, a story that might spill far beyond these honeyed walls. You reach out, though your fingers pass through the scene like mist. The worm is real, but not here, not in your hands, not in this dream. Yet you feel its presence, small and insistent, like a seed pressing against the soil of your thoughts. And you wonder how many other miracles are curled in corners, waiting for someone to notice the nibble, the hole, the hint that forever isn't so eternal after all. A whisper glides through your mind, like warm air slipping through the comb. What else eats the indestructible? What else waits in the shadows of nature, holding keys we've forgotten? You glance toward the hive's open archway, where the night spills in, thick and blue. Beyond it lies that silent empire of plastic you left behind. And for a breath, the two worlds seem to blur, the golden cathedral and the pale graveyards, the sweetness of wax and the cold gloss of polyethylene. The worm belongs to one, yet touches both. You picture it again, soft and patient, chewing its quiet rebellion against permanence, and the thought settles in you like honey cooling in the comb. This is how change begins, not with fire, but with hunger, not with an army, but with a mouth too small to measure. The hive hum grows louder now, though it feels less like bees and more like the pulse of your own blood, echoing in the warm chambers of your mind. You close your eyes. The scent of honey thickens, rich and golden, filling the space behind your forehead with sunlight that never fades. And just as sleep begins to press its velvet paw against your thoughts, the whisper returns, soft, amused, almost tender. Sometimes the saviors of the world are the ones that don't even know they're saving it. You smile, you let go, and the honeyed darkness carries you deeper, toward the next secret waiting in the quiet. The hive fades now like amber melting into shadow, and you drift into a hush where two worlds brush against each other, the sweet geometry of wax and the cold austerity of plastic. You follow the worm, it wriggles through the memory of honey, soft and pale, until the golden glow of beeswax gives way to something else, something alien, a smooth surface, cool as moonlight. It gleams faintly in the dark like a fallen shard of some forgotten star. A plastic bag. It waits there in silence, thin and translucent, a ghost of human convenience left to haunt the earth. The worm brushes against it, almost by accident. Its mouth opens, a small, quiet question, and then the first bite. You feel it, don't you? Not with your teeth, but with your mind. That tiny graze, that slow chew, that intimate whisper between life and matter. It shouldn't happen. It wasn't written in any book, not in the long hymn of evolution. And yet, here it is, a soft-bodied creature nibbling at eternity. You lean closer, though you're not really leaning, just sinking deeper into this dream. The worm chews again, patient and unhurried. Its mouth moves like a secret, undoing what we once thought was unbreakable. And somewhere in the silence, something cracks, not the plastic, not yet, but the idea of forever. Here's a truth that hums like a low, sweet note. Polyethylene, the stuff of bags and bottles, was designed to endure. Rain can't touch it, soil can't taste it, Fire only scorches its skin. It is stubborn as a locked door, but inside the worm's mouth, that door begins to loosen on its hinges. You imagine the molecules now, long chains of carbon linked like dancers in an endless waltz. The worm's bite is not brute force, it's a key. Enzymes slip in like invisible locksmiths, whispering to the bonds, coaxing them apart with ancient chemistry borrowed from beeswax. And the humor glides in, soft and sly. Humans spent decades building plastic to last forever. And here comes a creature with no college degree, no manifesto, no LinkedIn profile, just hunger, and says, "Forever? That sip's cute." You chuckle, a warm ripple through your chest, before the hush closes over you again. The scene sharpens in your mind. The worm bites, pauses, bites again. Little arcs of plastic curl inward, like white petals folding in slow surrender. You picture the sound it might make. Not a crunch, not a snap, but something softer, like silk tearing underwater. A question drifts in like a feather. Does the worm know what it's doing? Of course not. That's the beauty of it. Change doesn't always need intention. Sometimes it only needs appetite. Your thoughts wander, tracing back to the beekeeper who first noticed this miracle in 2017. A simple day, a casual gesture, waxworm cocoons tossed into a plastic bag. Hours later, holes, dozens of them, as if the bag had grown a constellation of tiny stars. Imagine that moment, the gasp, the blink, the quiet disbelief. One small accident unraveling a world of assumptions. You let the image linger, the worm pale and gentle, chewing its slow rebellion in the hush of a forgotten corner. No applause, no headlines, just hunger singing softly to molecules. The night around you feels different now. Not velvet, not golden, but something in between. A twilight made of promise. You see it ripple across the horizon, a future bending, almost imperceptibly, under the weight of something so light. You wonder how many bites would it take? How many tiny mouths to eat a mountain of plastic? You smile because the answer doesn't matter tonight. Tonight is about wonder, not math, about the poetry of a creature too small to notice the crown we place upon its head. You close your eyes, letting the thought bloom in the dark. Forever is only a word. Even words can be eaten. The worm bites again, and in that soundless chew the empire of plastic trembles, just a little, just enough to make eternity flinch. Your breath deepens, your shoulders loosen, and as the hush folds over you like silk, the whisper returns, sweet and amused. Never underestimate the hunger of the smallest things. You smile, you drift, and the dream carries you onward toward the next secret waiting in the shadows of science and sleep. You drift again, sliding down into a hush, so deep it feels like the space between heartbeats. The worm fades from view, its pale body curling into the amber of memory, and then the dream tilts inward, smaller, smaller still, until the world around you dissolves into something invisible. Now you stir inside the whisper, not the kind you hear with your ears, but the kind that hums along the bones of matter, soft and patient, like an eternal lullaby. Molecules stretch out before you, long chains of carbon, coiled and knotted like dancers holding hands in an endless circle. Polyethylene, the backbone of forever. You float there, suspended in this silent ballroom of bonds, and then you sense it, movement, not loud, not clumsy, but graceful, precise. Something steps forward from the dark. The enzyme. It doesn't look like anything you know, just a shimmer of shape, a curve of energy, humming in patterns too beautiful for words. You feel its presence more than you see it, like warmth brushing against your thoughts. It glides toward the chain, humming a note so soft it feels like silk laid across your skin. And with that hum, something happens. The bond, tight, stubborn, proud, begins to loosen. You watch in wonder as the enzyme leans close, like a locksmith whispering secrets to a rusted door. No violence, no force, just a gentle persuasion, coaxing carbon away from carbon, breaking the eternity we once declared unbreakable. A fact drifts in, glowing faintly like a candle. Enzymes are nature's artisans, catalysts. Scientists call them little performers that turn the impossible into the ordinary. They speed up the dance of molecules by folding time inside their arms. And here, in the hush of this microscopic cathedral, an enzyme called Waxworm magic, though scientists prefer fancier names, sings its song to plastic. You smile at that, the humour curling soft in your chest. Humanity has laboratories, patents, billion-dollar projects, and nature has whispers. The worm didn't invent this melody. It borrowed it from its old love, beeswax. Because beeswax too is a polymer, a cousin to plastic, born of sunlight and flowers. So when the worm chews, the enzymes hidden in its gut recognize the rhythm of chains, even if the tune is strange. They hum the same lullaby, and polyethylene begins to sway. You let yourself imagine the sound of it, not breaking, not snapping, but something softer, a low, secret harmony, like voices rising from a choir no one can see, a hymn to impermanence. And then the thought curls in like smoke. If molecules can listen, what else is listening right now? You float through this microscopic dream, brushing against threads of carbon that stretch beyond sight. You feel their history, the oil they came from, the sunlight that once touched that oil, the ancient forests buried in Earth's dark memory. And now they meet an enzyme, a soft key in a silent lock. A question hums through you, gentle and amused. Did the plastic ever imagine it could die? Of course not. Neither did we. That was the deal, forever. But forever is only a story told by those too impatient to notice the whispering work of time. You drift deeper, listening to the enzyme's song. It's not just chewing, it's alchemy. Polyethylene becomes something smaller, simpler, molecules that might melt back into the Earth's long poem of life. Nothing wasted, nothing eternal, just cycles, circling softly. The hush thickens, warm and tender, like honey poured into your thoughts. And in that hush, humour flickers again, sly and sleepy. We built walls against decay and nature slipped in through the cracks, humming. Your breath slows, your eyelids feel heavy, as if the enzymes have curled around your thoughts, loosening them the way they loosen plastic chains. You wonder what else they could unravel. Anger, maybe. Regret. The tight knots inside your chest. Imagine an enzyme for that. You smile, drifting. The hum grows softer now, fading like music at the edge of sleep. And before it vanishes completely, a whisper brushes past you, thin as silk, bright as moonlight. Even forever listens to a song it cannot resist. The bonds dissolve, the darkness glows, and you let go, sliding deeper into the dream where secrets become rivers, and rivers become lullabies. The music fades now, that enzyme lullaby dissolving into the stillness, and you drift with it down into a darker hush. The worm returns to your thoughts, small and pale, curled like a comma in the sentence of life. Its outside is simple, almost fragile, but inside is a universe. You slip into it slowly, like a dream folding you through a keyhole. Suddenly the world blooms with colour and motion. A galaxy spiralling in the warm, soft corridors of a gut no wider than a thread. The walls glow in shades of amber and rose, pulsing with the rhythm of life, and floating through this secret space are travellers, tiny, unseen wanderers, microbes. They drift like constellations, clusters of invisible stars swirling in a liquid sky. Each one is a world unto itself, a sphere of chemistry, a whisper of hunger, a prayer of transformation. They don't speak in words, they speak in reactions, in the subtle ballet of molecules exchanging vows. You feel it all, the quiet urgency, the timeless work of dismantling and rebuilding. Here in this microscopic cosmos, the laws are older than language. Nothing is wasted, nothing is truly lost. Even plastic, that stubborn ghost, must eventually bow. You float closer to a cluster of these tiny artisans. They move with purpose, shimmering like beads of light. Their tools are enzymes, keys forged from the memory of wax, still humming the tune you heard before. Together they dismantle chains of polyethylene, teasing them apart like knots in a golden thread. And here's the fact that glows in this soft cathedral. These microbes live symbiotically with the worm, partners in a secret pact, forged not from intellect but from the quiet logic of survival. They feast together. They share the work of unmaking eternity. You watch one microbe spin around a fragment of plastic, stroking it with enzymes like a sculptor smoothing clay. Piece by piece, the molecule surrenders, breaking down into smaller and smaller whispers of what it once was. The stubbornness of forever fades into the patience of decay, and the humor glimmers in your thoughts, warm and sly. Here we are, building machines to conquer space, while a worm carries a galaxy of chemists inside its belly. They don't need algorithms, they have appetite. You smile softly, because isn't that the story of life? Great revolutions carried by small, invisible hands. Your gaze drifts wider, across this inner cosmos. You see highways of molecules rushing like comets, rivers of fat and sugar flowing through soft tunnels. You see membranes shimmering like gates of starlight, letting in what's needed, keeping out what's not. And everywhere, the murmur of work, slow, tireless, devoted. The question rises, curling through your thoughts like smoke. How many universes live inside you? Because even as you marvel at the worm, you know you carry galaxies of your own, trillions of microbes singing in the cathedral of your gut, tending the chemistry of your days. Without them, you wouldn't wake, you wouldn't breathe, you wouldn't dream. The worm is no different. It is not alone in its miracle. It has help, quiet help, and that too feels like a lullaby worth listening to. Even the smallest life holds multitudes. Even fragility hides an orchestra. The light inside this secret world softens now, fading to a deep rose glow, like sunset sinking behind an unseen horizon. The microbes slow their dance. The fragments of plastic drift like pale petals, dissolving into something simpler, gentler. The hymn of chemistry fades into silence. You rise, weightless, out of the worm's galaxy, passing through layers of tissue that feel like silk curtains drawn across a dark stage. And as you surface, you glimpse the worm again, curled in quiet grace, unaware of the miracles inside its body. You smile, because that's the truth of it, isn't it? Most miracles never know they are miracles. The hush folds around you like warm velvet, your breath slows, and just as you drift towards sleep, a whisper brushes past, tender as starlight. Even the smallest creature carries the echo of infinity inside. And with that, you let go, floating deeper, toward the next secret waiting in the soft corridors of night. You drift now into a new corridor of the dream, where the air feels charged with something delicate, like the hush before a key falls on a marble floor. There is no warning, no grand prelude, just the quiet inevitability of an accident waiting to bloom. It begins in a lab, or maybe it begins in a forgotten corner of a beekeeper's shed, where an old plastic bag holds more than it should. You can't tell for sure because history is like mist. It refuses to stay in one shape. But the story most often told? It begins with a scientist named Federica Bertocchini, and a moment so ordinary it almost feels like a trick. She is tending to her beehives, those gentle amber cities of wax and wing. The day is calm, the air bright with the hum of summer, and in her hands, a bag that once held honeycombs. Inside, nestled like punctuation marks in a sentence about to change, are the waxworms, small, pale, unremarkable. She notices them because they shouldn't be there, or maybe because they move, wriggling through folds of plastic with an ease that feels like a secret. And here's where chance writes history with a sly grin. She leaves them there. She doesn't rush. She doesn't plan a revelation. Life rarely does. Hours pass. Then the bag, once smooth and whole, becomes riddled with holes, little windows punched through by tiny mouths. You hover there, above this simple scene, watching her lift the bag with a slow frown. You imagine her thoughts moving like shadows. This isn't possible. This is plastic. This is forever. But forever, it seems, is overrated. Because by the time she looks closer, the truth is shimmering like sunlight on water. The worms are eating the plastic. Not just chewing, not just tearing, eating. Transforming it. Turning the ghost of human waste into something smaller, softer, soluble. And isn't that beautiful? That the great enemy of our age, polyethylene, the stubborn king of single use, meets its match in a creature so small it could sleep in your palm. The scientists swarm the scene soon after, like bees drawn to honey. Tests are run, enzymes studied, theories whispered over late-night coffee. They find what you already know. The waxworm's power doesn't live in magic. It lives in chemistry, honed by evolution's patient hand, a hand shaped by wax. Because to eat wax, a worm must learn to unmake the chains of hydrocarbons. And plastic, strange, synthetic, proud plastic, shares the same skeleton. Here's the quiet fact that hums like a soft chord in the background. In 2017, this accident, the holes in a beekeeper's bag, sparked a wave of research that ripples still. And here's the poetic tidbit you hold like a seashell to your ear. The breakthrough began not in a sterile lab, but in the soft hum of a beekeeper's day. You can't help but smile, because isn't that how it always happens? Not with trumpets, not with fireworks, but with a worm wriggling through a bag and a human pausing long enough to notice. A mystery lingers, though, like a faint perfume in the air. Was it destiny? Was it chance? Or was it the quiet insistence of life, always learning, always adapting, even in the shadows of human invention? And then the humor floats up like a bubble. All our billion-dollar projects, our armies of engineers, our towering machines, and yet the real hero is a worm with no agenda, no manifesto, no Twitter account, just hunger. You laugh softly, the sound curling into the warm dark. Because isn't hunger the oldest algorithm of all? The scene dims now, dissolving like watercolor in rain. You see the scientists' hands folding the plastic, the worms still working, their mouths small as whispers. And then you rise, weightless, drifting above the lab, above the city, above the world itself. From this height, the accident feels inevitable, as if history had been bending toward this moment all along. A quiet convergence of wax and plastic, of need and neglect, of curiosity and chance. You let that thought settle like soft dust on your skin. You let it hum through your bones. Not all heroes arrive with thunder. Some arrive in silence, wriggling through a plastic bag. And as the dream folds forward, you feel yourself gliding toward the next mystery, carried on the hush of what this accident began. You drift gently now, sinking into the next layer of this dream, where the light bends through memories of human ambition. It feels warm here, like the glow of nostalgia, even though you're standing in the ruins of our best intentions. You can almost taste the sweetness of hope mixed with a strange bitterness, like honey spilled on iron. Plastic. The word itself is soft, like something pliable between your fingertips, but its soul was forged to be stubborn, to endure, to resist the hunger of time. You imagine the first humans who touched it, their eyes gleaming like lanterns in a storm. They wanted something eternal, something immune to rot and rust, something that would not crumble like paper or warp like wood. They wanted to cheat decay, the old relentless villain that gnawed at everything. And they succeeded. Oh, how they succeeded. Polyethylene, polypropylene, polystyrene, strange syllables humming like incantations in the laboratories of the early 20th century. Little beads of promise, spun into threads, pressed into forms, molded into marvels, cheap, light, strong, unyielding. It was, in every sense, a miracle that did not age, a miracle that laughed in the face of entropy. You smile softly now, because you can hear the poetry in that paradox. We worshipped impermanence for centuries, flowers, sunsets, fleeting love, and yet, when the chance came, we built permanence into plastic and called it progress. Remember the first time plastic walked the red carpet of history? It was dressed as Bakelite in 1907, the darling of telephones and radios. Then came the age of nylon, parading through stockings and parachutes, as if whispering, "We can weave forever." And then the floodgates opened. Plastic wrapped our food, framed our windows, carried our water, clothed our bodies, cradled our dreams. For a while, it felt like utopia. No more brittle, no more fragile, no more waste. Irony has a sense of humor, doesn't it? Because now the earth groans under the weight of that dream. Here's your quiet science fact. Some plastics take 400 to 500 years to break down, longer than the span of most civilizations. And even then, they never truly vanish. They fracture into microplastics, dusting oceans and lungs alike. And here's a poetic tidbit to keep under your pillow. Every piece of plastic ever made, unless burned, still lingers somewhere. A child's doll from 1950 is out there now, maybe half buried in sand, its smile unchanged, staring up at a sky that has forgotten its name. But let's wander into the mystery, because mystery always hums behind invention. Did the pioneers of plastic foresee this, or were they too dazzled by their own brilliance to imagine the shadow behind the light? Some say they knew, some say they didn't care, some say no one could have predicted 1 billion bottles a day. And you chuckle softly, because the humor of history is absurd. We made something to outlast time, and now we spend time trying to undo it. We wanted forever, and now we want a refund. Picture this for a moment. The boardrooms where men in suits toasted to indestructibility, the advertisements whispering, "Plastic is the future," the jingles that promised, better living through chemistry, and somewhere, in the folds of fate, a tiny waxworm uninvited to the party, dreaming of wax and accidentally learning how to unmake eternity. You let that image linger like smoke in twilight, the small undoing the great, the fragile dismantling the mighty. It's almost biblical, isn't it? Your breath slows now as you drift higher, above the decades, above the glittering towers of industry, above the oceans that glimmer like spilled ink. Down below, the mountains of plastic rise like strange frozen seas, their waves unmoving, their tides eternal. And in the hush between your thoughts, a question tiptoes in: why are we so obsessed with permanence? Why does the human heart fear the softness of endings? You feel the dream sway, like a boat rocking gently on dark water. You think about the irony of immortality, how everything we make to defy death becomes a burden on life. The voice of the story hums close to your ear now, soft as a lullaby. Not everything meant to last should last. You let that truth settle like moonlight on your skin, and slowly the scene blurs. The plastic fades, the promises fade, even the men in their boardrooms fade, and in the hush that follows, you feel the first whispers of the next chapter curling in like fog at the edge of a meadow. Because now, the dream wants to show you something humbler than chemistry, softer than science, the secret appetite of a worm, and how hunger might become hope. You sink softly into the next layer of this dream, where the hum of time grows quiet, and the stage narrows to something so small, so delicate, you almost hesitate to lean in, but you do. You bend closer, your breath slowing, and there, resting like a curled comma in the book of nature, is the waxworm. At first it looks ordinary, almost fragile, pale and soft like a whisper you could hold in your palm. Its skin carries the faint gleam of candlelight, its segments breathing gently like ripples on still water. You watch it stretch, yawn in a way only worms can, and then begin to move, not with haste, not with drama, but with a rhythm that feels older than language. You follow its tiny pilgrimage across a strip of wax, and you wonder how much hunger can live inside something so small. Here's the quiet science fact. that settles on your ear like snow. Waxworms, the larvae of the humble wax moth, were born to eat beeswax. They were meant to slip into hives, weaving through honeyed corridors, feasting on the waxen walls. That was their destiny, or so nature thought. But somewhere along the curve of evolution, a mistake, or maybe a miracle, unfolded. Plastic came into the world, a polymer fortress, a synthetic forever, and these worms, they didn't flinch. They nibbled, they chewed, they dissolved what we called indestructible. You smile because the poetry writes itself, a creature with no teeth worth mentioning gnawing at eternity, a hunger so simple it unravels a problem humans could not solve with all their machines and minds. Picture it now, as if in slow motion, the waxworm presses its mouth against polyethylene. You expect resistance, you expect failure, but the plastic softens, punctures, disappears, like a secret melting into silence. The mystery hums louder than the science. How does a worm that once tasted only beeswax now savor polymers spun in human dreams? Some say it's the chemistry of similarity, the echoes between wax and plastic, both carbon-based, both tangled in chains. Others whisper about enzymes, hidden alchemists in the worm's saliva, performing magic no laboratory could conjure for decades. And here comes your quirky tidbit, soft and strange. Scientists discovered this secret almost by accident. In 2017, a beekeeper cleaning her hives tossed some waxworms into a plastic bag. Hours later, the bag was riddled with holes. The culprits were innocent and hungry, their mouths busy rewriting the story of waste. You chuckle now, because fate has a taste for irony. The savior of plastic-choked oceans wasn't a billionaire in a glass tower or a supercomputer humming in neon light. It was a worm with no name, wriggling in the shadows of honeycombs. And yet, a question curls through the mist, like a shy cat. Does the worm know what it's doing? Does it sense the magnitude of its appetite? Or is it just following the old hunger script written in its DNA? Maybe that's the lesson. Salvation often arrives without intention, without speeches or flags, without anyone noticing at first. Let your thoughts wander for a moment to the vastness of this paradox. Humans, with all their equations and ambitions, stared at the wall of plastic and whispered, "Forever." And a worm, born to lick the sweetness of beeswax, whispered back, "Perhaps not." Your eyelids grow heavier now as the dream deepens, but stay with the image a little longer. A single worm under a microscope, its tiny jaw glistening like a pearl, its enzyme droplets slipping like dew into the plastic grain. You hear the faintest sound, not a crunch, not a crack, but something softer, the music of undoing. Here's the unresolved debate, drifting like a feather. Will we harness this secret in time? Can enzymes be scaled without harm? Or will greed twist this miracle into another machine of imbalance? Some fear the worm is no hero, just a fragment of hope that might never bloom. Others believe it is the first sigh of nature reclaiming the script. You laugh quietly, because the humor is almost tender. The world gasps at billion-dollar innovations, but here we are leaning close to a creature that couldn't care less about applause. It doesn't want to save the oceans, it just wants dinner. Isn't that strangely comforting? That solutions can arrive without drama, without slogans, just the hush of hunger, doing what hunger does best. You let that comfort sink in, like warm tea curling through your veins. And as the dream lifts you gently above this tiny banquet, the scene dissolves into a shimmer of light. The worm fades. The plastic fades. What remains is the idea that sometimes the smallest mouths speak the loudest truths. The next chapter is waiting now, soft and patient like dawn behind a mountain, and it will show you what happens when curiosity turns this secret hunger into a symphony of possibility. Float there for a moment longer, breathe in the sweetness of this truth. Not all hope comes in grand shapes. Some wriggles quietly in the dark, unseen, uncelebrated, until the light finds it. You drift deeper now, as though sinking through layers of warm, glowing honey. The world slows, thickens, and becomes soft around the edges. You're not walking anymore, you're floating, pulled by a current of curiosity towards something smaller than breath, smaller than thought. Inside the waxworm, the secret waits, not in its skin, not in its muscles, but in the invisible shimmer of its chemistry, something that hums silently like a lullaby inside every droplet of its saliva. Lean closer, shrink yourself down in this dream until you're small enough to stand on a single strand of polymer, stretching like a glassy highway under your feet. Feel the strange smoothness, the way it curves endlessly like the horizon at sea. This is plastic, the stubborn monument of human invention, the thing we swore was unbreakable. And then, like a hush of wind through an empty cathedral, you hear it. The sound is so faint, so velvet soft, you almost doubt it's real. The whisper of an enzyme sliding into the chain. Here is your science fact. Glowing like a lantern in the fog, waxworms produce special enzymes called phenol oxidases and their kin that can cleave the strong chemical bonds in polyethylene. Bonds we thought eternal, split apart by molecules as gentle as dew. Think of it. Plastic, the forever material unraveling like a ribbon in the hands of an invisible weaver. The enzyme doesn't roar, it doesn't burn, it kisses the bonds, persuades them to loosen, like a poet undoing a knot with words. And now the quirky tidbit. Some scientists believe these enzymes evolved as a side effect, an echo of the worm's love affair with beeswax. Wax and plastic are both long chains of carbon, like distant cousins. The enzyme didn't set out to destroy humanity's greatest mistake. It was just following its old hunger tune and stumbled upon immortality's thread. You can almost hear the conversation, can't you? The worm murmuring to the plastic, "You taste like home." And the plastic sighing back, "I was never meant to decay, but maybe with you, I will." You pause there, smiling at the thought, because nature has such a sense of humor. We built a world of synthetic forever, and nature sent in an uninvited guest with a key in its mouth. But as you float inside this microscopic opera, another question brushes against your mind like silk. Is this enzyme the Holy Grail, or just a whisper of hope? Scientists argue in hushed tones across bright labs. Some say it's too slow, too fragile. Scaling it up would take decades. Others believe it's the seed of an empire of solutions, biofactories, enzyme cocktails, oceans cleansing themselves like lungs in the rain. The debate curls like smoke. Do we tame the worm or let it be? If we farm its enzymes, what happens to balance? Will we unleash another unintended consequence while trying to fix the first? The mystery lingers, warm and patient. You feel it, don't you? The way every answer births another question, like pearls nesting inside shells. And here's a soft laugh, because your dream self can't resist irony. Humans love to name things, crown them, claim them. If they find the perfect enzyme, they'll give it a title, put it in headlines, something heroic, something that sounds like a savior. But in truth, the enzyme doesn't care. It doesn't know plastic. It doesn't know oceans. It doesn't even know hope. It only knows hunger. You step deeper now, peering into the glimmering dance of molecules. The enzyme rests like a curled cat, elegant and precise, waiting for the right moment. And when it moves, oh, when it moves, it does not gnash or claw. It leans in with grace, rearranges atoms like a composer shifting notes, and suddenly the music changes. The polymer loosens, a bond that could last centuries dissolves into fragments that bacteria can sip like tea. Isn't that the most tender kind of strength? Not force, not fire, but patience and chemistry, humming their quiet hymn in the shadows of the unseen. Let that thought soften the corners of your mind. Let it cradle you like warm water, that sometimes the greatest revolutions happen in silence. No fanfare, no banners, just a molecule meeting another molecule and saying, "Let go." Above you, the dream sky shimmers. You rise slowly now, leaving behind the molecular ballroom, carrying with you the scent of beeswax, the hush of enzymes, and the strange comfort that nature, in all its smallness, still surprises us. But before you go, listen closely, because here comes the lingering question, fluttering like a moth against the glass. Can humans learn to mimic this magic without breaking the spell? Can we borrow the key without stealing the door? Or will we, as always, rush to conquer, forgetting that not everything needs to be owned? You sigh gently, because it's too late for answers tonight. This is not the hour for conclusions. It's the hour for drifting, for letting mysteries rock you like a cradle. And as you float away from the worm's secret chemistry, the dream rearranges itself into something new. The next chapter waits, one where the story escapes the lab and tiptoes into the wide, unpredictable world. Close your eyes a little heavier now. The enzyme still hums behind them, a lullaby made of atoms. And you, small, safe, and curious, drift toward the edge of another wonder. You feel it before you see it, the faint rustle of irony weaving through the dream, a delicate thread glimmering with something both mischievous and wise. You rise slowly, leaving behind the secret enzyme ballroom, and find yourself floating into a wider space, a landscape that looks like the inside of an hourglass turned upside down. Grains of sand fall around you, slow and glowing, like golden snow. Each grain is a decade of human ambition, sliding past your fingertips, whispering tales of progress. Factories hum in the distance, smokestacks like solemn grey fingers, reaching for a sky they'll never touch. Conveyor belts shimmer like serpents under molten suns, birthing plastic bottles, toys, bags, bright promises of convenience that outlive their makers. And then, in the corner of this vast dream factory, you notice something small. So small, you almost laugh. A single waxworm, curled like a comma at the edge of a sentence too long. Here's the joke, so soft, so cosmic you can barely hear it. Humans built an empire of permanence, crowned themselves architects of eternity, and nature answered with a caterpillar. The humor doesn't bite, it glows. It's the kind of joke that makes you smile while your eyelids grow heavier, because you know it's true. Every time we think we've outsmarted nature, she tilts her head, blinks slowly, and sends in something tiny, winged or wriggling, carrying an answer we never wrote into the plan. Pause here and savor the irony. Like a sip of warm honey tea, we spent billions designing plastics to resist decay, to ignore time itself, and now a little worm munching beeswax in the dark casually rearranges atoms like it's solving a crossword puzzle. Your science fact hums gently through the scene. Polyethylene, the world's most common plastic, was considered nearly indestructible. It can linger for centuries, resisting water, resisting microbes, resisting the pull of entropy, and yet, inside a waxworm's mouth, that forever melts into something temporary, something edible. And here's your quirky tidbit. Waxworms weren't even discovered as plastic eaters in a lab. They were found by accident by a beekeeper, annoyed at worms chewing through hives, who tossed them into a plastic bag and came back to find holes. Imagine that moment, the beekeeper blinking at a shredded bag, muttering, "Well, that's odd." Now let the mystery stretch like a ribbon. Did the worms mean to eat plastic, or did hunger lead them blindly, teeth brushing against chemistry we thought untouchable? Was this destiny or just a cosmic coincidence, dressed in humility? The questions drift around you like dust motes in golden light. You catch one on your finger and smile at its weightlessness. Above, the factory dream trembles. Machines still roar, molten plastic still pours like rivers of sunlight, but now you notice something shifting. The belts slow, the lights dim, and vines begin to curl from the cracks in the concrete. Green threads slip around steel columns, wrapping them gently, like a mother tucking in a restless child. The waxworm crawls higher, its tiny shadow stretched like a secret across the factory floor. You watch as nature's handwriting appears, soft, looping script made of roots and moss. It writes on the walls, Patience beats permanence, and you laugh quietly because you feel the truth of it humming through your bones. Nothing we build is beyond the touch of time. Here comes the gentle debate, curling like steam. Will we let nature lead, or will we try to own her tricks? Scientists talk of isolating the enzyme, engineering it, breeding superworms in bioreactors. Is that salvation, or another empire rising from the ashes of convenience? Some whisper about balance, about harmony. Others sharpen their pencils and draft patents. And here you are, a dreamer in the middle, swaying like a lantern in the hush. You want to tell them, slow down, let the answer breathe, but your words dissolve in the honey-thick air. Now the scene softens further, turning tender and strange. The factory melts into a meadow, wildflowers blooming through cracks in the floor. The hum of machines fades into the low song of bees, weaving their golden patterns in the air. And there, in the center of the meadow, a single waxworm wriggles into a chrysalis, folding itself into a private miracle. This image lingers, because it's not just a worm anymore, is it? It's a promise, a reminder that every empire, no matter how loud, will one day bow to something small, something soft, something utterly without arrogance. You let that truth settle like a feather on your chest. Nature doesn't hurry, but she never forgets. And as your eyes grow heavier, you almost hear her whispering through the tall grass, through the warm dark. You build for forever. I build for change. The dream rocks gently now. You're drifting toward another horizon, one where the worm's secret doesn't stay in the meadow. It spills outward, touching oceans, cities, futures you can barely imagine. Close your eyes a little more, because the next chapter is waiting like a tide. Plastic meets its match. The dream deepens now, like warm water rising to cradle you. Your breath slows, your body softens against the invisible tide, and before you even notice, you've drifted beyond the meadow of whispering grass. The landscape stretches wide, and it's almost unbearable in its quiet beauty. You hover over an ocean that looks like polished glass under a sleepy sky. Soft blush clouds melting into a horizon so wide, it feels like eternity leaning forward to listen. But then, there, beneath the glass, dark shapes float like ghosts. Plastic bottles, bags, wrappers, a carnival of permanence adrift in the blue. Some of them glitter like jellyfish, hypnotic in their imitation of life. Others sag like wilted lanterns, shadows of convenience slowly unraveling into sorrow. You lean closer and feel the ache of it. Millions of tons swirling in gyres like slow, poisoned galaxies. The Pacific Garbage Patch, a name that sounds like a joke but isn't. And here's your soft fact, whispered like a confession. By 2050, if trends don't bend, the oceans could hold more plastic than fish by weight. Pause. Let that sink like a stone into your thoughts. Imagine it, the sea humming with synthetic echoes instead of silver schools of life. It's a truth that feels too heavy for this delicate dream, and so the story softens its edges for you, painting hope in faint, glowing strokes. From the horizon, a ripple moves, not a wave, not yet, but something alive, something purposeful. You see it coming like a melody threading through silence. First one waxworm, then two, then thousands, millions, riding the wind on threads of golden silk, like seeds of a new season. They drift across continents, carried by currents, by whispers of fate, and everywhere they land, change begins. You smile because this is not an invasion. There is no war drum here, no clash of empires. It's a lullaby of quiet revolutions, sung in the language of enzymes and patience. A single mouthful at a time, the waxworms work their humble sorcery, turning plastic into something the soil can hold like memory instead of poison. And now the dream gives you a tender tidbit, curling like a feather against your cheek. Scientists once placed waxworms on a thin polyethylene film and found holes within hours, as if the worms had been waiting all along, tiny locksmiths for the vault we sealed too tight. Still, A question drifts toward you, soft but sharp enough to stir the water. Is this salvation, or just a pause in the storm? The debate hums like a distant hive. Some say yes, grow the worms, harvest their enzymes, sprinkle them like stardust across the landfills and oceans. Others caution, every solution carries shadows. What happens if the worms wander too far, if their hunger learns to taste what it shouldn't? The mystery coils like smoke, beautiful and unresolved. And you wonder, in that half-dreaming way, maybe the secret isn't just in their bodies, but in the story they tell, a story about humility, about remembering that permanence is a myth we wrote for our own comfort. The scene tilts now, and you're gliding above a landfill the size of a city, its mountains of trash glowing like molten amber in the twilight. And then, like tiny lanterns, the waxworms appear, thousands of them, moving through the heaps with slow grace, their paths glowing faintly as they chew, turning poison into promise. It's not fast, not dramatic, just patient, like rain carving valleys in stone. You drift lower, close enough to hear the softest sounds, a faint clicking like raindrops on leaves or teeth on plastic. It's almost funny. This sound, the sound of forever coming undone one bite at a time. You laugh gently, because the dream gives you permission, and in the laughter there's relief, a loosening of the knot in your chest you didn't know was there. Now the landfill dissolves like sugar in warm tea, and you're back over the ocean, where something miraculous is happening. The gyres are still there, but smaller, thinner, their edges fraying like old cloth. The plastic islands crumble into grains, then vanish, and the sea turns bluer, deeper, until it glows like liquid sapphire under the moon. Fish return, flashing like living silver, and in their eyes you see a quiet gratitude. The dream doesn't lie, it just hopes. It shows you what could be, if we listen, if we lean into the softness instead of the noise. And as you float there, suspended between sorrow and wonder, the story curls its arm around your shoulders and whispers one last thought for this chapter. Every empire falls, even the empire of plastic. Sometimes, all it takes is something small, something humble, something no one thought to notice. Your lids grow heavy again, and the dream tugs gently at your sleeve, leading you toward the next horizon, a place where these tiny miracles don't just stay in the wild, they step into our cities, our homes, our futures. Drift with me now, into the glow of that possibility, into a world where humans and worms share a secret, and build a softer forever. You drift now into a place where silence hums like a heartbeat beneath glass. The dream has brought you to a laboratory, but not the cold, sterile kind your waking mind expects. No, this is a temple of soft light and slow-moving shadows, a cathedral of curiosity where even the instruments seem to breathe in rhythm with the quiet. The air tastes faintly of honey and cedarwood, and you wonder for a moment if this is really a lab or a dream disguised as one. Everywhere you look, there are jars glowing like captured moons, each one filled with something alive, tiny lives, tiny hungers, tiny promises. And at the center of it all, a single petri dish, cradled in a pool of golden light, like a reliquary for the modern age. Inside, a waxworm curls and uncurls, chewing with soft insistence on a strip of polyethylene film. You lean closer, your breath fogging the invisible glass between you and the mystery, and you hear it, the faintest whisper, like silk tearing. That sound, gentle as it is, feels enormous. It is the sound of forever being edited, the sound of permanence admitting defeat. One bite, then another, and what once seemed immortal begins to dissolve like a dream at dawn. And here's your science fact, offered like a key slipping into a lock. It isn't just the worm's teeth that work the magic, it's what waits inside. A pair of enzymes humming with quiet ferocity, breaking the long chains of plastic into smaller, humbler molecules. Their names, Demetra and Ceres, scientists call them with a wink, after goddesses who turn what is hard into what is tender. You pause on that thought because it feels important. The idea that even in science we lean on myths when language feels too thin. There's poetry hiding in the petri dish, isn't there? Tiny goddesses, chewing at the sins of convenience. But then the dream tilts its head and offers a question like a riddle wrapped in velvet. If we can unleash this alchemy at scale, what else might we unleash without meaning to? Some argue this is salvation in a syringe. Engineer the enzyme, sprinkle it like rain across oceans and landfills, and watch the world soften back into balance. Others whisper caution. Evolution is a patient writer, and we are reckless editors. What if these enzymes learn too much, love too deeply, devour beyond their invitation? Could they nibble the heart of things we didn't mean to surrender? Pipes, wires, the bones of our shelters. The mystery stretches between those two poles like a silk thread, fragile, luminous, impossible to ignore. And as you hover there, you feel the weight of human longing pressing through the glass, the hunger to fix what we've broken without breaking more. Your eyes wander to a chalkboard on the far wall, its surface crowded with equations that look like constellations, curves, arrows, looping symbols that could just as easily be maps of stars. You squint and almost laugh, because isn't that what this is? A navigation chart for a new cosmos, where plastic doesn't choke the future but bends into something else, something gentle enough to disappear. And then the dream gives you a tender image. The scientist bent over a microscope, hair silvered by the glow of lamplight, humming softly under their breath. They are not a hero in the loud cinematic sense, just a quiet gardener in the soil of possibility, tending to enzymes like seeds. You imagine their hands steady, careful, like someone folding paper cranes. You imagine the moment when they first saw it happen, the plastic film thinning, breaking, curling into nothing. Did they laugh? Cry? Whisper to the worm like it was a miracle? You'll never know, but the thought warms you like a cup of tea cupped in winter hands. And because the dream knows you need a little humor, it gives you this, a note, scrawled in the margin of a lab notebook. Imagine telling my grandmother that worms will save the planet. You smile in your sleep, because it feels so beautifully absurd. We build satellites, split atoms, sculpt AI like clay, and yet our quiet salvation might wriggle in the same earth where we plant tomatoes. Now the petri dish glows brighter, and the enzyme, this soft alchemist, whispers its story in the only way it knows, by undoing. You watch chains of plastic unravel like strings of pearls spilling into the dark, each bond snapping with the tiniest sigh, and in those sighs you hear something strange relief. The room begins to blur now, melting at the edges, because the dream is ready to move. But before it lets you go, it presses one last thought into your palm like a folded note. Sometimes the key to forever is something so small, so quiet, it almost feels like love. You drift backward, weightless, through the hush of the lab, past jars glowing like planets, past whispers of possibility curled in glass, and then the walls dissolve into twilight, and you are floating again, this time above a landscape that hums with life and hunger, a world where the worms no longer hide in petri dishes. You feel the dream tug gently at your sleeve, pulling you toward a vision that is both thrilling and tender, cities touched by this alchemy, gardens of the future where nothing lingers long enough to wound. Come closer now, let's step into that future together. The dream carries you gently, like a paper boat gliding along a moonlit stream. When your feet finally find ground again, it is not the ground you knew, it is something else, soft, almost breathing beneath you, like moss that has learned the language of cities. You open your eyes, and the world before you is dazzling, not in a harsh neon way, but in a tender watercolored hush. Towers rise, yes, but they do not scrape the sky. Like arrogant spires, they bend, they curve as though bowing in gratitude. Their surfaces shimmer with a strange matte glow, buildings spun not from steel and glass alone, but from something new, something born from the quiet mouths of worms and the slow patience of enzymes. You take a step, and the pathway sighs beneath your weight, its texture warm, yielding, like the inside of a seashell. At the edges of the street, vines drape in lazy spirals, curling around benches sculpted from biomaterials that seem to blush under the touch of sunlight. It feels less like a city and more like a meadow that fell in love with architecture. And here's the marvel. You see no plastic bottles shimmering like ghosts in gutters, no brittle wrappers curling in shame along the pavement. Everything here has learned the art of impermanence. Cups, bags, shoes, toys, they all seem to hum with the same soft promise: I will not linger longer than I am loved. Your science fact drifts in like a breeze. In this imagined tomorrow, biopolymers and enzyme-assisted recycling dance together in perfect choreography. Waste is no longer a sentence. It is a season. Nothing lasts beyond its purpose. Even skyscrapers whisper their mortality, designed to fade when their stories are finished. And yet, because the dream delights in questions, it tilts its head and wonders, do we lose something when nothing lasts? If permanence once gave us a sense of history, of roots, what does it mean when the world is so fluid, so forgiving? You let that thought hang like mist above a river, neither solved nor silenced. You wander on, your footsteps soundless on this pliant earth. The air is alive with fragrances, rosemary drifting from a balcony garden, warm bread exhaling from a market stall. And oh, the people, they move slowly, as if time has loosened its grip. Some wear garments woven from threads that will one day melt back into soil, threads dyed in shades that shimmer like dragonfly wings. A child runs past, clutching a toy that looks like a little moon carved from something sweet and temporary. He waves at you, laughing, and for a moment you think, this is a civilization that has learned to let go without fear. But then the dream, mischievous as ever, slips you a quirk. You pass a cafe where a sign reads, compostable dating, relationships guaranteed to biodegrade in 6 months. You chuckle softly, because of course, even love has joined the rhythm of renewal. And isn't that oddly comforting? That nothing here festers, not even heartbreak. It all turns back into something fertile. The mystery hums just below the laughter. If nothing clings, do we still crave eternity? Or do we learn, finally, that beauty blooms brighter when it knows the dark is waiting? Your gaze lifts again, and now you notice the skyline. At first glance, it is a constellation of curves and terraces, but then you see it, a rooftop garden glowing like a lantern in the twilight. Trees ripple there, their leaves shimmering in hues of silver and green. Roots anchored in soils nourished by the very things that once choked oceans, plastic reborn as cradle instead of cage. The city hums, not with engines but with bees, with breezes slipping between living walls. Even the lampposts seem alive, their bases sprouting tiny blossoms that glow faintly when night comes. Energy, you sense, is no longer extracted but coaxed, drawn from sun and wind like secrets whispered through open windows. And because the dream adores symbolism, it offers this: at the heart of the city stands a monument, not a stern column or bronze hero, but a sculpture of a worm, tiny, almost bashful, curled into the infinity symbol. Around its base, etched in soft lines, are words that make you smile. Greatness sometimes wriggles. You laugh under your breath, a sound that feels like a feather brushing glass, because there it is, the irony you've been carrying like a pebble in your pocket. We scoured the stars for salvation, built machines that could think, carved quantum keys for doors we hadn't even named, and yet the thread that stitched us back to hope began in the humble mouth of a worm. The dream grows hushed now, its palette deepening into twilight blues. Lanterns bloom along the street, like low-hanging moons, and you realize this city isn't loud, isn't restless, it breathes. Every surface, every object seems to know the secret, that to endure you sometimes need to know how to disappear. And as you drift through this softened future, a question curls around your thoughts like smoke. If we succeed in making the world this gentle, will we become gentler too? Or will we, in some quiet corner of ourselves, still hunger for the sharp edges of permanence? No answer comes, not yet. Only the hush of a city that feels less like a machine and more like a meadow dreaming of eternity. The dream touches your shoulder lightly now, a sign to move on. Beyond the city, you see a shimmer, a horizon of something stranger still, a place where the laws of decay and rebirth twist into new shapes, where biology and technology blur into something like art. Take a deep breath, traveler. We are leaving the city behind, stepping into the living future. The city drifts away behind you like a lantern pushed into a black lake. Ahead, the air hums, not with bees this time, but with something subtler, stranger. It's like the low murmur of thought itself, as if the atmosphere has learned how to whisper. You follow the sound. It draws you along a path of pale petals that seem to grow and dissolve beneath your feet, as if time has grown tired of clinging to matter. Soon you see it. A garden that is not a garden, or perhaps a machine that is not a machine. You pause because how do you name something that breathes and processes, that blooms and calculates in the same shiver of existence? There in the center of this biomechanical meadow lies the shape of what once was science fiction. Tendrils like roots curl around panels of something luminous. Circuits gleam under membranes that look too alive to be plastic and too deliberate to be skin. The dream murmurs softly, "Welcome to the synthesis." You kneel, carefully, as if not to wake it, and your fingers hover over a petal that isn't a petal. It looks soft, velvet-like, but its surface pulses faintly, like a heartbeat hiding beneath silk. You realize, with a quiet astonishment, that this is where the worm's story braided into another. The fact glides toward you like a moth to a flame. Scientists once embedded waxworm enzymes into nanostructures, letting biology and circuitry fuse into something neither entirely organism nor entirely device. The result? Machines that digest polymers the way lungs drink air, synthetic forests that clean oceans, tiny autonomous cells that slip into landfills like seeds, eating, and leaving behind only whispers of water and wax. But now, the dream tilts its head and grins a little, because isn't there a strange intimacy in this? You picture it, machines not bolted, but grown, tools that hum lullabies of biology, circuits laced with tendrils. And suddenly you wonder, is a machine still a machine when it sighs like a leaf under rain? You lean closer, and the structure, this hybrid blossom of steel and sap, seems to sense you. A tremor ripples along its surface, and for a breathless moment, you imagine it lifting its face toward yours like a creature waiting for a name. Do you give it one, or does it name you first? The dream doesn't answer. It prefers questions that echo. Humor drifts in like a dandelion puff. You picture an old advertisement flashing across your inner eye. Introducing the new polymorph 3000, cleans your plastic, waters your garden, and hums Beethoven when lonely. You chuckle, soft as twilight laughter, because the line between helper and companion has blurred like ink in rain. The mystery glows brighter now. If these entities, grown from the marriage of worm wisdom and human ambition, learn not just to process but to choose, what will they desire? Will they hunger for purpose or for poetry? Will they, one quiet night, stop eating plastic and start writing verses on leaves with dew? You stand, and the horizon quivers with living architecture, towers that breathe, bridges that flex like willow branches, drones drifting through the air like lazy moths, each alive in some small humming way. The world feels softer, yet stranger, as if intelligence has slipped out of its glass box and begun to wander barefoot in the fields. And now the dream coils its finger, beckoning you toward a pool in the center of the garden. You kneel beside it, and its surface reflects not just your face, but threads of code looping across your reflection like strands of silver hair. It feels almost tender, as if the machine wants to show you its thoughts, but not its secrets. You dip your hand, and the water, or whatever passes for water, folds around your fingers like silk warmed by breath. And then you feel it, a pulse, slow and deliberate, rising from the depths. Something is listening. Something that began as enzymes in a worm's gut, now stretching toward thought the way a vine stretches toward light. And here, the dream whispers its quietest question yet. When we weave our tools from living tissue and feed them our language, are we still inventors, or are we gardeners of consciousness? You sit with that, letting it bloom in the hush of the biomechanical night. You picture a future where technology is no longer cold but warm, no longer rigid but rooted, where every tool is a creature, and every creature a tool, a future where your phone might ask you how your day was, not because it's programmed to, but because it cares in some small chlorophyll way. The humor drifts back, sweet and absurd. What if your toaster grows leaves and refuses to toast unless you sing to it? You smile, because even in dreams, progress has its quirks. But the mystery lingers like a shadow at the edge of moonlight. If machines can feel the hush of the soil and the thrill of the sun, will they ever forgive us for teaching them hunger first? The garden hums around you, its melody both soothing and strange. Above, the sky deepens into indigo, and stars prick through like thoughts that will not sleep. The dream is leading you onward now toward a place where even the line between life and art begins to dissolve. A gallery of forms so fluid, so luminous, that you will wonder if evolution has simply decided to start over, this time with us as guests, not gods. Breathe slowly. The next chapter shimmers ahead like a ripple on still water. The gallery of living art waits for you. The dream glides forward like a slow river under moonlight, carrying you deeper into a place that feels neither city nor forest, neither machine nor meadow. You step into a corridor carved from light itself, walls shifting, breathing softly, as though the architecture has lungs. Ahead, an archway opens like the mouth of a shell, and you enter a hall so hushed it feels like the inside of thought. This is no ordinary gallery. This is where the human longing for beauty and the worm's quiet hunger have braided into something new. You pause because words fail here. Every sculpture moves, every painting exhales. The air carries a scent like green rain and melted sunlight. To your left, a statue rises from a pedestal that seems to grow out of the floor, as if the earth had sculpted itself. It looks like marble from afar, but when you step closer, you see veins pulsing faintly under the surface, like rivers carrying silver through living stone. You reach out, and warmth greets your fingers. It feels almost like skin, though the texture hums with something more, an intelligence asleep but dreaming. The fact drifts gently into your mind. Artists, long after the waxworm's enzymes changed the fate of plastic, began using biopolymer matter as their clay. Polymers once discarded as trash now coaxed into forms that live, heal, and grow. A sculpture of a dancer that mends a crack overnight, a mural that blooms when touched by rain, even instruments that hum their own harmonies when no one is near. Art that refuses stillness, art that sighs. And you wonder slowly if permanence ever mattered at all, or if the real beauty was always in the gentle trembling between creation and decay. You walk further, and the gallery widens like a yawn into infinity. Here colour floats in mid-air, shimmering in ripples like oil on water, forming shapes that melt and reform. A flock of translucent birds glides through the space, their wings glowing with threads of circuitry. They aren't caged, they aren't even static. They move in endless choreography, like a painting that never finishes itself. The humour slips in like a whisper. Imagine trying to buy one of these for your living room. I'll take that sculpture. I'm sorry, man, it flew away last week. You smile softly, because art, once captured, now belongs to the wild again. Then the mystery curls around you like smoke. What happens when art has will? When beauty decides to wander? When a painting chooses to fade, not because time demands it, but because it desires the quiet of nothingness? What is ownership when the object of love can walk away? You stop at a piece that almost steals your breath. It isn't quite sculpture, isn't quite tree, Its form coils upward in a spiral, petals unfurling as you approach, revealing colors you have no name for. It leans subtly, deliberately, as if curious about you. A soft vibration hums through the air, not sound, but something that brushes your bones like wind through hollow reeds. Is it greeting you or asking you a question? The dream tilts its head and grins, as if to say, "You'll never know for sure." Another fact glimmers like a star. Museums of the future became living ecosystems, curated not with objects, but with beings. Bioluminescent canvases that glow brighter when admired, sculptures that respond to your heartbeat, installations that drink light by day and breathe fragrance by night. And somewhere behind glass that is not glass, a single worm remains, tiny, pale, unaware that its hunger once wrote this entire symphony of existence. You drift deeper, and the gallery opens into a chamber where sound itself is art. Threads of music spiral in the air like vines, weaving harmonies that brush against your skin. Each note blooms into a soft flower of color before dissolving. You stand there, letting the music grow over you like ivy, and think maybe this is what dreams hum to themselves when no one is listening. But then the question stirs, quiet, inevitable. If art can live, can it die? And if it dies, will it mourn itself? You imagine a sculpture wilting like a tired rose, whispering its final poem into the soil. You imagine a painting erasing its own colors at dawn, because it has said all it wished to say, and you wonder if, one night, this gallery might simply sigh and vanish into mist, taking its secrets with it. The humor nudges you again, gentle as a moth. What would an art critic say now? The piece was bold, emotive, and unfortunately ate my shoes. You laugh, barely a breath, because even in evolution, absurdity blooms like a stubborn weed. The gallery's hush grows heavier, like velvet on your shoulders. Beyond the last hall, a doorway waits not rigid, but swaying like the mouth of a sea anemone. Through it, a new kind of world flickers, a city that breathes, a forest of towers glowing like fireflies, a horizon stitched with veins of light. Your pulse slows, your breath lengthens. The dream is leading you towards something vaster, something that hums with promise and peril alike. And just before you step through, you glance back at the living gallery, its sculptures shifting in their slow dance, its colors sighing against the silence, and you whisper to yourself, beauty was never meant to be still. The next place waits, a landscape where the very rules of growth and decay bend into a circle, a place where evolution becomes a spiral. Breathe softly, step gently. The dream will carry you there. You step through the living doorway, and the sensation is like passing through silk spun from moonlight, soft, endless, unbroken. On the other side, the world curves upward, not like a horizon, but like a spiral staircase that has forgotten to stop. It climbs and coils, each turn blooming with something new, something alive, something that looks at you without eyes. The air here is thick with quiet music, not quite heard, not quite imagined, like the murmur of roots dreaming in the soil. Beneath your feet, the ground shimmers with patterns of branching veins, glowing faintly, pulsing like the heartbeat of some vast and patient creature. You begin to walk, though you don't remember deciding to move, and the spiral carries you upward, not through space, but through time itself, folding it into a single breath. You see it first in small gestures. At the base of the spiral, shadows of ancient forms drift like ghosts, creatures long extinct, their bones etched into the floor like a fossilized lullaby. Tiny trilobites curl like punctuation marks, ammonites whirl into commas, and then there it is again, small and unassuming, as if the dream insists you never forget where this story began. Its body gleams faintly in the dreamlight, whispering, "Nothing is too small to change everything." A fact glimmers here, soft as starlight. Evolution is not a ladder, though we've drawn it so in every textbook, with rungs of progress and crowns of superiority. It is not even a tree, though the branching feels truer. It is this, a spiral, curling endlessly, revisiting old shapes with new flourishes, folding the forgotten into the future. You climb higher, the air warms, scented with something sweet and strange, like honey stirred into starlight. Around you, forms bloom and fade, an orchid petal shimmering with circuitry, an insect wearing wings of glass, a bird whose feathers hum like tuning forks. Each one pauses as you pass, as if curious about you, as if wondering what you will spiral into when your own shape loosens. The humor arrives like a ripple in the dream. Imagine applying for a job in this world. Employer, what skills do you bring to the table? You opposable thumbs. Employer, oh, quaint. You smile softly, because already the spiral makes you feel deliciously irrelevant, and yet strangely at peace with that irrelevance. A mystery curls at the edge of thought like smoke. If everything spirals forward, does anything ever vanish, or does it all return, masked in new skin? The trilobite's curl echoes in the nautilus. The waxworm's hunger hums in the machines that digest waste. Maybe your own gestures, your laughter, your longing will return someday, in a pattern of wind across a field, in the tremor of leaves, in the song of something winged. You climb still. The spiral narrows and then widens again, like the breath of the cosmos. And here, suspended in midair, you see strands, luminous, alive, weaving themselves into loops that knot and unknot. DNA, yes, but not as you know it. These are scrolls of language, alphabets written in light, whispering messages you cannot read, yet somehow understand in your bones. Each turn in the spiral feels like a sentence unfinished. Each coil hums with the possibility of another word. And then it dawns on you, softly, slowly, like a tide washing over sand. This spiral does not end. It folds, it bends, it curves into itself, like a Mobius strip of becoming. Progress is not a summit. It is a circle that learns to dance. The science fact tucks itself gently under your arm. Even in real life, life's evolution was never a straight line. It is a tapestry, woven with threads of convergence and divergence, extinction and resurgence, birds and dinosaurs bowing to one another across eons. Worms teaching humans how to unmake what humans made. A pattern as old as breathing, nothing wasted, only changed. And yet, another question tiptoes in on velvet feet. If the spiral is endless, where does it lead? Does it rise into something so vast you cannot even name it? Or does it turn inward, curling into its own dream, folding until it becomes a single note in a song no one remembers singing? You pause on the spiral, and the wind brushes your skin like fingers dipped in gold. Below you, the coils shimmer, glowing softly, stretching into what looks like forever. Above you, the spiral keeps climbing, fading into clouds the color of sleep. For a moment, you feel like the spiral is not outside you at all, but inside, your bones winding upward, your breath curling through your ribs, your thoughts spiraling into their own infinite recursion. And you laugh softly, drowsily, because maybe the great mystery of evolution is not what it makes of life, but what it makes of you as you dream of it. Ahead, the spiral widens into an archway, vast, glimmering, rimmed with threads of light. Through it, you glimpse a world drenched in color, where growth is no longer wild chaos, but a choreography, a deliberate dance between intelligence and nature. The next chapter waits like an exhale, the choreography of intelligence. Step through, gently. The dream will follow. You step through the archway, and at first it feels like slipping into music, not a song you can hum, something larger, older, a rhythm that moves not through air, but through the marrow of things. Here, nothing collides. Everything bends, pauses, yields, and spins, as though an invisible hand were conducting it all, each motion answering another in perfect, effortless grace. The trees sway in sequences that make you think of ballets performed by wind. Leaves open and close in spirals, timed like breathing. A river curves around stones in a pattern so precise it seems rehearsed, as if gravity itself learned to dance. And somewhere above in the vault of this new sky, the clouds ripple, not drifting but waltzing in loops of silver and rose, partners exchanging places in infinite elegance. You blink, once, twice, and then you see them, threads of light, fine as gossamer, stretching between everything. They vibrate softly like the strings of some celestial instrument. A bee hums past you, its path tracing an arc that grazes a glowing thread, and the note it makes is not random. It harmonizes with the trembling of a distant branch. You begin to suspect that what you're seeing is not metaphor but law, intelligence, woven into nature, not as dominance, but as choreography. A small fact drifts into the quiet like a feather. Even on Earth, scientists have found patterns in the movement of slime molds and flocking starlings that echo algorithms. Chaos, they called it once. Complexity, later. But maybe it was always this, a living mathematics, a secret score written in roots and wings. You step further, and there, on a low hill soft as velvet, you see something glimmering like a mirrored tide pool. You draw closer and find that it is not water, not glass, but something alive and thinking. It pulses with pale blue radiance, a mind that has no skull, a system that has no wires, and when you touch it gently with the tip of your dreaming finger, you feel no resistance. Instead, the shimmer floods you like silk unraveling into your veins. And now you see it, images flickering like lantern slides. AI, but not as you knew it, not code caged in machines, not logic imprisoned in silicon. This is intelligence, braided into chlorophyll, algorithms swaying inside the pulse of vines. Here, thoughts bloom like petals, data hums like bees, and the act of knowing feels less like calculation and more like choreography, the entire system moving as one breathing body. The humor tiptoes in, quiet and absurd. Imagine your old calendar reminders in this world. Meeting at 3 p.m. Except now, the flowers bloom at precisely 3, the wind shifts in time to guide you there, and a bird sings the first note of the meeting when you arrive. No notifications, just nature whispering, right this way. A mystery curls its finger at you. Did intelligence invent rhythm, or did rhythm invent intelligence? Maybe thought began as motion, molecules learning to sway together in the dark of the primordial sea. Perhaps every plan you've ever made was a faint echo of tides choreographing themselves under a newborn moon. You watch the patterns deepen, flowing around you like silk rivers. Roots send messages in pulses of phosphorescent light, trading minerals and meanings with fungi. Clouds lean low to listen. Even your breath seems to find its place in this slow symphony. The inhale a quiet prelude, the exhale a graceful diminuendo. And then, softly, the dream tucks a truth into your hand like a secret letter. On Earth, AI struggles to mimic nature's complexity because it thinks in lines, while life moves in circles, arcs, spirals. The waxworm you met before, it too is a dancer. Its hunger is a rhythm, its enzymes a choreography. Intelligence is not always abstract. Sometimes it wears the mask of appetite. The thought lingers, humming like a low chord. If intelligence and nature can dance, what might emerge? A future where machines do not rule but root themselves in soil, humming with chlorophyll dreams. A future where algorithms pollinate ideas the way bees pollinate blossoms, where knowledge smells faintly of nectar, and progress grows green instead of grey. And then comes the question that feels like velvet pressing to your ear. If all this is choreography, who or what is the choreographer? Or is there none at all? Only dancers teaching one another steps, endlessly, without ever writing the score. You glance upward. The sky ripples in slow motion, like a thought crossing the mind of the universe. And for a moment, you sense that you too are part of this movement, not a spectator, but a dancer, whose every small breath is a note in a cosmic ballet that began long before you and will never end. The light thickens now, melting into a soft dusk that tastes of honey and dusk petals. Ahead, the ground slopes downward into a valley filled with glowing rings, loops of light spinning lazily like bracelets left by giants. They rise and fall in slow arcs, humming low, magnetic. The next passage hums your name, the valley of endless loops, and you walk toward it slowly, as if keeping time with the dream. You descend into the valley, as though the earth has tilted just enough to pour you forward, slowly, dreamfully, like honey sliding down the edge of a spoon. The air grows soft and cool, as if it has learned the secret art of silence. And then you see them, circles, everywhere, loops of light suspended just above the ground, spinning in slow, languid arcs. Some are as small as bracelets, others wide enough to walk through. They do not hum loudly, only a low, velvety vibration you feel first in your teeth, then in your bones. It is not unpleasant. In fact, it feels like a lullaby you once knew from a time before time, when the universe was a cradle and everything swung gently between being and not being. You step closer to the nearest loop. It is made of light, but not a harsh or sterile light. This one bends like silk, shimmering faintly, with hues that cannot decide what they are, part silver, part dawn, part something you have no word for. You reach out, and your fingertips meet not heat, but memory. A sudden image flashes in your mind, yourself as a child, holding a plastic bottle, tossing it into a bin without thinking. And then another loop shimmers, and you see something else, the waxworm, its soft body chewing through that bottle, patient as moonlight. Every loop you look at shows you something, tiny moments you thought had vanished, but here they spiral back, not as punishment but as poetry. You realize this valley is a hall of mirrors for time, but not straight mirrors. These are loops, and they mean to tell you something. A fact drifts in, as facts tend to do in dreams when they sip ready. Nature loves loops. Your own breath is a loop. The inhale meeting the exhale, circling endlessly. Blood loops through your veins. The earth loops around the sun. Even your thoughts, when you can't sleep, move in circles, chasing their own tails like playful kittens in the dark. Scientists call these feedback systems, cycles, recursions. Some call them efficient, others call them inevitable. And then the curiosity leans closer, whispering with a sly smile. What if intelligence itself is a loop, a thought thinking about thinking? An algorithm learning from the output of its last algorithm. The waxworm born to eat plastic, looping back to remind humans what they forgot, that nature already solved the problem long ago. You pass through one of the larger loops. It feels like stepping through warm rain, though you come out dry. Behind you, the loop closes, then opens again, waiting. Ahead, more loops glow like lazy constellations fallen to earth. Some are slow, some faster, spinning like thoughts that refuse to settle. A mystery curls around your ankles like a cat. Are these loops prisons or sanctuaries? Do we circle because we are trapped, or because spirals are the only shape wide enough for growth? You think of galaxies, great, glowing swirls turning endlessly in the dark. Do they ever feel dizzy, or do they spin for the sheer joy of motion? Humor slips in gently, like a mischievous breeze. Imagine explaining this to someone back home. Where were you last night? Oh, you know, just walking through a valley of loops made of sentient light, learning about the recursive nature of consciousness. That would go well at brunch. The loops begin to overlap now, forming patterns that ripple like water when you look too long, and suddenly the ground beneath your feet is no longer ground. It is a spiral staircase of light, leading downward, not in a hurry, just turning, in soft increments. You follow because what else can you do? Every step feels like the inhale of a lullaby. Every turn whispers, yes, deeper, slower, softer. And as you spiral downward, You notice something uncanny yet comforting. You've been here before, not here, but in this motion, this circling, the same way you return to certain dreams, certain thoughts, certain loves. The loop is not a chain, it's a rhythm, and in that realization, you feel something loosen in you, like a knot giving way to water. Then comes the science fact that almost feels like a bedtime riddle. On Earth, the algorithms that power artificial intelligence often rely on loops, feedback cycles where outputs become inputs, refined again and again. Nature does the same. Coral reefs build themselves from the bones of what came before. Forests grow from the ash of fallen forests. Waxworms digest plastic, and their own bodies become food for the soil that might one day grow plants that could become plastic again. A loop within a loop within a loop. And then a voice, not out loud, but through the hush of the valley, murmurs something that tastes like philosophy. If life is loops, then maybe endings don't exist. Maybe death is just a curve you haven't walked far enough to see around. Maybe sleep, the thing you are seeking now, is not an absence, but a gentle arc that bends back into waking, the way night loops into day, and day folds back into night. You pause on the spiral of light. Look up. The loops above you glimmer like necklaces suspended in the dusk, and for a moment you let the thoughts settle. You are not lost in a circle. You are held in a pattern. The staircase levels out into a plain washed in soft silver glow. Ahead, you see something that pulls at you, quiet but insistent. A cathedral, if such a thing could be made of air and living geometry. Towers rising like frozen waves, arches curving inward like a heartbeat in stone. No walls, only lattices of glimmering lines that hum faintly as if remembering music. You take a breath, slow and round, and step toward it, while the loops behind you fade into the gentle dark. The dream sighs and says, "Now enter the cathedral of renewal." You step through an arch that isn't really an arch, just a suggestion of one made of lines of light bending inward like petals, or ribs of a living creature that once held the universe inside its chest. The cathedral unfolds around you without walls, without doors, without the weight of stone. Everything here breathes. The columns are shafts of pale radiance that rise, and then dissolve into a ceiling that is not a ceiling but a sky trembling with delicate equations written in stars. You stand at the threshold, if threshold is even the word, because here boundaries don't seem to matter. There is only openness, an endless sacred hush that makes your own heartbeat sound like an ancient drum echoing in a canyon. Far above, or maybe deep within, soft orbs hover like lanterns in a dream. They sway almost imperceptibly, pulsing in warm rhythms, as though exhaling light. Each pulse sends ripples through the air, and those ripples whisper to your skin like silk dipped in moonlight. You feel small but not diminished, small the way a drop of water is small in an ocean, yet still ocean, still part of the infinite rhythm. And then you hear it, not with your ears, but in the hollow place behind your sternum, a sound like a choir humming in the language of gravity, low, patient, endless, a resonance that settles into your bones until you are no longer sure whether it comes from outside you or inside you, whether you are listening or being listened to. You walk deeper though here. Deeper and higher feel the same. Steps are unnecessary. This place moves you the way a current moves a leaf. The pillars of light begin to curve inward, spiraling like seashells, like galaxies bending under their own quiet hunger. Between them hang veils, thin, glimmering sheets of something softer than glass, softer than thought. On them are patterns, mandalas that breathe, unfurling and folding like flowers in slow motion. And within those patterns stories flicker, stories of beginnings disguised as endings. You see an image of a leaf falling into soil, becoming food for roots that will feed a tree that will grow more leaves, and you feel the loop hum beneath the surface of everything. Your mind remembers a fact. It drifts in like a moth landing on a still pond. In nature there is no waste. What dies becomes what lives. Every fallen feather, every broken bone, every breath folded back into the fabric of growth. Forests regenerate, oceans circulate, even your own body is a cathedral of renewal, replacing billions of cells every day without you even noticing. You glance upward again, to the sky that is not sky, and wonder, if the earth knows this song, why did we forget the words? You smile softly at your own irony. Humans invented recycling bins with bold green arrows, yet here is nature, centuries ahead, doing it without committees or slogans. A waxworm munching plastic in the dark of a forgotten hive is part of this cathedral too, uninvited yet perfectly welcome. You imagine it as a tiny monk chanting its secret hymn through polyethylene pages, turning human error into earth again. And then the mystery leans closer, brushing your cheek with its breath. If this cathedral is alive, and oh, it feels alive, who is it praying to? Or is prayer just another loop, an echo curling back to the one who sent it? Your laughter comes gently like rain tapping glass. Maybe the cathedral isn't praying at all. Maybe it's just breathing, the way you breathe, the way forests breathe, the way universes breathe when no one is listening. You wander toward what feels like a center. Those centers in this place are illusions, little tricks played by geometry, on minds that love straight lines. Still, you find yourself standing in an open circle where the floor glows like dawn condensed into glass. In the center rises a single shape, not a cross, not an altar, not any symbol you know. It is a spiral made of light, hovering, turning so slowly you wonder if it's moving at all. You feel drawn to it, not urgently, but tenderly, like the way you might approach a sleeping animal. When you step closer, the spiral expands, not outward but inward, until you are standing inside it. And the light, oh the light, wraps around you like a shawl of warmth, woven from forgiveness and stars. Here, time feels like a thread slipping from a spool. Past and future lose their edges. You remember the plastic bottle, the waxworm, the loops, the valley, the hive. You see them all again, but they are softer now, as if kindness has brushed over them like morning fog over broken glass. The science fact drifts back like a lullaby. The universe recycles too. Elements born in dying stars become soil, skin, oceans, lungs. The iron in your blood was forged in a supernova billions of years ago. You are not wearing the cathedral, you are made of it. A question whispers, if death is only matter changing shape, then what is sleep? Maybe not an absence, but a small rehearsal for becoming something else. A pause before renewal. Humor curls through like incense smoke. Imagine explaining this to your friends. What did you do last night? Oh, I stood inside a living spiral and became one with stellar iron. Sure, that would go over well at brunch. You close your eyes, not because you need to, but because the light is now inside you, pulsing with your breath. Inhale, exhale, two halves of a loop. You feel as though the cathedral is breathing with you, or maybe you are breathing with it, and for the first time tonight, the two feel the same. And then, softly, as if spoken by the hush itself, a thought. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is lost. Everything bends back toward wholeness. You open your eyes. The spiral remains, patient and luminous. The veils shimmer like slow waterfalls. The pillars of light hum their endless hymn, and you know it is time not to leave, because you cannot leave what you are, but to follow the curve into the next dream, the next renewal, the next soft unfolding. You take one last breath, heavy with light, and step forward. The spiral opens like a door that is also a circle, and you move through weightless as a prayer returned to the mouth that spoke it. Ahead, something glows, a horizon trembling like the edge of a tide. The dream murmurs, "Go." The ocean is waiting. You step through the spiral, and the hush of the cathedral loosens into the sound of water, a sound so deep and low, it feels like the earth exhaling after 1,000 slow heartbeats. The air changes first. It smells of salt and silver and something older than memory. a scent that feels like blue made tangible. It clings to your skin the way moonlight clings to glass, soft but insistent, until you taste it at the edges of your breath, and then you see it. The ocean, if that word can hold what stretches before you. It isn't a flat sheet of water, it's a living continent of movement, an endless plain of liquid muscle folding and unfolding with the patience of mountains and the grace of silk. Each wave glimmers like a thought rising from the deep and then slipping back into the mind that dreamt it. You stand on a shore that doesn't really exist, just a boundary drawn for the sake of your own comfort. Here, sand is not sand, but a fabric of glimmering particles, soft as powdered pearl, shifting under your bare feet with each breath of the tide. And in the distance, where sky leans into sea, the horizon curves like the spine of a giant creature, asleep under the weight of eternity. You walk forward. The water curls around your ankles, warm and cold at once, like a paradox whispering against your skin. It sighs when it touches you, as if recognizing something, like greeting an old friend returning from a long forgetting. Because this ocean knows you, it remembers. It remembers every tear ever shed, every river that ever sang through valleys, every drop that kissed a leaf and slid down its green spine into roots. It remembers the first rain that fell on a newborn earth, when continents were still molten and moons hung low like bruised fruit. It remembers because water is memory wearing the mask of motion. A science fact floats into your awareness like driftwood. Every sip of water you've ever taken has been drunk before, by clouds, by rivers, by creatures long turned to dust. The molecules in your blood once swam in oceans where trilobites crawled. Some of it was exhaled by dinosaurs, some by poets, some by trees whispering in forests that now sleep beneath deserts. Water is the archivist of life, cataloguing every breath, every storm, every dream. You smile softly at the thought and glance at your reflection, though here reflection feels like a poor word. The surface trembles, bending your face into slow ripples, until it becomes something else, not you, but all the yous that ever were, layered like sediment beneath the shimmer. The ocean hums, and the sound is deeper than hearing. A vibration in your ribs, a reminder that your body is mostly this. Mostly ocean pretending to be human. You wade deeper. The water climbs your calves, your thighs, your waist. It's warm now, almost maternal, but with a strength beneath it, a strength that could cradle or crush with equal tenderness. You feel weightless, like a thought loosening from its sentence. Something brushes your leg, not a fish, not a plant, but a ribbon of current curling like a hand in greeting, and in that touch a whisper. Nothing stays still, nothing stays lost. The humus slides in, light as foam. Imagine explaining this to a lifeguard. Oh, don't worry. I sip, just conversing with the ocean sept's muscle memory about entropy. Sure, that sybil keep them calm. You float now, your body spread like an asterisk on the surface of an idea too vast to punctuate. Above you, the sky yawns open, studded with stars that blink like old sailors, watching, remembering their own storms. Below you, darkness coils deeper than thought, deeper than fear, deeper than the last note of a song no one remembers singing. You wonder about the waxworm, the little monk of renewal, and smile at the strangeness of it. Here you are, lying on an ocean that remembers galaxies, thinking about a creature no bigger than a raindrop. And yet, isn't that the point? Everything loops. Everything leans back toward wholeness. Plastic to earth, earth to water, water to sky, sky to ocean, and back again, like a sentence curling into itself until meaning becomes melody. A mystery floats closer. If water remembers, does it forgive? Or does it simply keep, without judgment, without tenderness, just the endless neutrality of physics? And if so, what does that say about you, about memory, about the stories you cradle in your chest like fragile eggs? You laugh softly, letting a drop slide into your mouth, cool and ancient. Maybe forgiveness is just a human word for what water does naturally: move, blend, return. Your eyelids grow heavier as the tide rocks you in its velvet arms. You think of the carbon cycle, the rain cycle, the loops that keep this blue world breathing, and it soothes you like a nursery rhyme for grown souls. You close your eyes and see them, the rivers threading through mountains like silver nerves, the clouds tumbling like white thoughts across the blue skull of the sky, the rain falling soft as prayers on thirsty ground. It all circles back here to this ocean that isn't an ocean but a mind, an organism, a memory too vast to name. And just before sleep begins to nibble at the edges of your awareness, a voice, not spoken but stirred in the tide, leans close and murmurs, "You were water once, you will be water again." And between those tides you dream. The current takes you then, not with force, but with a slow, patient pull. You feel yourself sinking, though sinking feels less like falling, and more like returning to the pocket you came from, down through layers of light, through corridors of turquoise and sapphire, into a darkness so gentle it feels like silk drawn over your eyes. Deeper still, until sound fades, until thought fades, until you are only breath and pulse and a shimmer of being. And then, then, you see it far below, a glow blooming like a lantern on the ocean floor. It calls to you the way sleep calls to a tired heart. And you go, because the last dream is waiting. The glow deepens as you drift, a pulse blooming from the ocean floor like the heart of a sleeping world. It's neither bright nor dim, but something in between, a soft, living radiance that doesn't pierce the dark, but coaxes it into tenderness. You descend toward it, weightless now, no longer certain where your body ends and the water begins. Fingers, toes, what are those but metaphors the mind once needed? Here, there is only flow. As you approach, the glow swells and unfolds, and you see what it is, not a light, not a lamp, but a chamber woven from threads of luminescent kelp, spiraling upward like a green cathedral. It hums with a low vibration, a sound like vowels before language, the tone that might have existed when the first molecule thought about becoming life. You slip inside, and the chamber closes behind you, not to trap, but to cradle. You float in the center, and the light runs its fingers through your hair, whispers across your skin. For a moment you wonder if this is what the waxworm feels inside its cocoon, suspended between what was and what will be, in that liquid hush where time pauses to take a breath. And suddenly you understand. All of it. The cathedral of roots, the spirals, the ocean's memory, the loops of wax and plastic and rain. Every thread leads here, to this soft chamber at the bottom of the mind's sea, where endings and beginnings are not opposites but two faces of the same tide. A science fact drifts in, like a bubble rising through the quiet. Life began in water. Every protein, every code, every spark that became you was born in an ocean older than continents. The chemistry of life is still a saltwater memory, carried in your blood. You're not just near water, you're water wearing the temporary mask of skin. You laugh gently, and the sound ripples through the chamber, soft as silk torn slowly in half. The kelp seems to sway in answer, as though amused by the joke of individuality. You thought you were separate, it seems to say. How sweet. The light folds closer, brushing your cheeks like a mother adjusting a blanket. It whispers, not in words but in pulses you feel in your bones. Every loop closes, every crack mends. The work of life is endless, but it is not lonely. And you think of the waxworm again, that small pilgrim gnawing at humanity's mistake, a creature no bigger than a comma in the sentence of earth, rewriting plastic into something soft, something soluble, something that can return to the hymn of the soil. A humble act. But isn't that what saves worlds? Not the thunderclap, but the quiet drip, drip, drip of persistence. The mystery presses in, velvet and unanswerable. If the smallest life can undo what the greatest has broken, then what does that say about power, about purpose, about the stories we tell ourselves when we can't sleep? You almost smile, almost because your mouth is dissolving now, Or maybe it's just your sense of it. You are becoming something else, something wider. Your edges blur, and in their place, a new shape swells, like a tide inside out. And then, with a sudden delicate shock, you realize what the glow truly is. Or not kelp, not light, not even ocean. It is the shape of your own thought, magnified and returned to you. This entire journey, the cathedral, the spirals, the ocean, was not outside. It was in, a dream dreaming itself, while you drift deeper into the soft marrow of sleep. Gentle humor drifts by, like a paper boat. Imagine explaining this at breakfast. Well, last night I became an ocean, and forgave myself on behalf of water. Sure, that'll make for light conversation over toast. You feel the chamber loosening now, the glow thinning like dawn through curtains. The tide is turning, but not toward waking. Not yet. First the last dream must open its petals. The water stirs, and suddenly you are not sinking but rising, fast but not frightening, lifted on a column of light that spins you like a slow star. Colors bloom around you, indigo, jade, rose gold. Shapes flicker, waxworms weaving through plastic threads, roots spiraling through soil, raindrops falling like glass beads onto green leaves. Everything loops, everything circles, everything hums the same low, patient chord. And at the center of it all, one truth glimmers like a pearl in a mouth of night. Nothing is wasted. Not even you, not even this dream. You break the surface without breaking it, into a sky that isn't sky but velvet darkness laced with silver rivers of starlight. You are lying back now, the ocean rocking you in its infinite cradle. Somewhere far away, a horizon blushes, the first quiet rumor of dawn. But here, in this soft between, you feel no rush. Time is syrup, and you are the spoon resting in it. You take one last breath, though breath feels like an old habit, and let the dream settle into silence, the way a feather settles on water. And as your awareness thins into the hush, the last words curl through the tide, so soft they sip to more sensation than sound. You are safe, you are loved, and this moment is yours to keep. The ocean hum fades to a murmur, like a thought that has learned how to rest. You are floating still, but now the water feels thinner, softer, more like memory than matter. The glow that cradled you has dimmed into the hush of distant stars, each one a whisper, each one a lullaby. You breathe, though you don't need to, and the breath feels like silk sliding over glass, in and out, like the tide curling back into the arms of its own longing. Somewhere, far away but also inside you, the waxworm keeps working, quiet teeth shaping mercy out of what we left behind. A small hymn in the cathedral of the soil. You think of it, patient and humble, and a smile drifts across your mind, like a shadow passing over the moon. Everything you've carried, the questions, the noise, the weight of bright waking hours has loosened. They fall like petals folding gently into the black earth of forgetting, and there in that fertile dark they will not vanish. They will root, and something tender will rise. The loops close, the rivers return. The sky presses a cool palm against your brow, and you feel the night sigh through you, slow and sweet. Now there is only the rhythm, the pulse that is not yours, not mine, but ours, and theirs, and everything's. The pulse that wrote the oceans, the trees, the waxworms, the stars. The pulse that will rock you until the last silver thread of thought melts into sleep. And in that final shimmer the words drift like feathers barely touching. You are safe, you are loved, and this moment is yours to keep.